Good morning, West Ham United. Well, good morning, West Ham Network. This is hardly Bobby Williams. Anyway, I hope you are safe and well, rest of the West Ham Network. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're enjoying your bowl of cereal. Maybe some toast. Bit early for a fry up in the week, or a bacon sandwich. That's more like a Saturday, Sunday type thing. Unless you're Tommy Sienna, of course. And you're at Dino's Cafe. Anyway, if you're new around here, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it a subscribe. We are actually, it's been mental since Thursday on the channel with all the shorts and subscribers. We had Mark Robson on Wednesday night. We had Nosey on yesterday. Just crazy. And anyway, in the middle of that, obviously we've got the Europa Conference League final, but in the middle of that as well, on Sunday, obviously you played Leeds at the London Stadium, which is believed to be Declan Rice's last game for West Ham at the London Stadium. Last time I see Dec in a West Ham shirt at the London Stadium, potentially. I'm about 70-60. 70-60, that's all right. 70-30. 70% he's gone, 30% he's not. Because we're all body language experts now, aren't we? Oh, but when he scored, he did this, and this, and then on Instagram he said this, and we don't know. We don't know, do we? We don't know what's going on. We don't know what his thought process is. I think it's changed. I think he looks conflicted. I'll be honest, but that usually happens before you make a decision, isn't it? You just, am I sure this is right? Am I sure this is right? Am I sure this is right? And so there was one thing I sort of looked at was at the AZ Alkmaar game. The interview afterwards at BT Sport, you had Joe Cole, Colton, Robin van Persie, and Jules. And Jules said to him, if you lift the trophy, you'll be one of a very small select of players at West Ham to have done so, the others being Billy Bonds and Bobby Moore. And you saw almost like a realization, his face dropped. It's almost like a realization of what he could potentially do, what he could, in terms of the history books. And I think that's just, for me, just a little, we've been like 10%, he's going to stay. Now about 20, 30%. I'll be honest. And people go, oh yeah, the way he left the pitch and he's the captain. He has to do these things and that, and obviously all the bits and bobs and the lap of honours and things like that. We don't know. Sky Sports yesterday said there's a gentleman's agreement has been put in place between West Ham and Declan Rice that he can go in the summer if obviously the release clause is met. Or the fee is met, not a release clause, but the fee is met. Obviously, we've got I think he's got 1 year left in his contract plus another year. So if there's an option, we've got an option on him. So we could keep him for 2 years and then 2 more seasons, and he leaves for nothing at the end of that period. He'd then be 26, 27. And look, we don't know. I mean, in terms of him as a player. Ironically, the Leeds game, that was 6 years to the day that he made his debut for West Ham, coming on as a substitute against Burnley. And then I think he came on against Man United as well, didn't he? The following. No, that was not until August. It was the last game of the season, wasn't it? He came on for Burnley. It's Burnley in a 2-1 away win. Since then, he's gone 243 appearances, which puts him in the all-time list currently at number. Where is it? I think he's in the top 60. I think he's in line with. I think he's just behind the likes of Pop Robson and stuff like that, and I think he's about 15 off Malcolm Allison. He's had more appearances than Alan Dickens, Martin Allen. Steve Lomas, David Cross, Agbonna, Lanzini, Clive Best, Peter Braybrook, Trevor Morley, Paul Goddard. The list goes on. Mark Ward, Johnny Byrne. So a lot of prestigious players, John Moncur, Paul Allen, Frank McAvenny, Joe Cole, Tom Repka. So, there's a hell of a lot of players who have played less games than him. 15 goals in his West Ham career. If he scores one more, it will be his best return ever. He's coming on 5, and his previous one was 5, I think, which was last year. I think it was last year. He had 5 goals as well. So it's good. How many years? 3 years, I believe. Only Billy Bonds. Is it Billy Bonds and Trevor Brooking have scored it? Have won it more. And all but 1 year he was runner up in 2018 and 2019. Although they don't, we do the runners up now, do they? So he has. He's been recognised internally by the fans as well. But where's he go? Where's he go? And apologies for my glasses. I've just got new glasses, and I have to wear them. So I do apologise if you get the glare. I'm trying to do this, but I have to wear them to get used to them because this eye's got better, and this eye's got worse. I'm going to look like bloody Captain Hook in a minute. Just put a patch over this eye soon. So I've have to wear them to get used to them. I don't tend to wear them on stream because you see the lights. But I thought if I just look down at this, that looks better. So in terms of where he could go, there's a number of clubs, and we know there's a number of clubs, and we know we've got a 120 million pounds price tag on his head as well. We know he hasn't been involved in the new kit launch that was done at Carpenter's Arms a few weeks ago. But then we see stuff on his Instagram, and he scored the goal on Sunday, and he was like that for all the fans, and he said there's no better place or something like that. He knows what he's doing as well. He scratched his head, so therefore he's thinking about it on the pitch. No, he's not. He just has an itch on his head. So realistically, I mean, there's realistically 11, but I put 12 because I wanted 12. I always look nice. So obviously scouring the world for places that, firstly, could probably afford him, in all honesty, or would have the potential to afford him. And straight away, I've discounted 3 of them, obviously. The bottom one, Saudi Arabia, we know they've got the money to buy someone, but it wouldn't happen. But when they're paying Ronaldo £500,000 a week, but it's not about the money for Rice. We've offered him contracts where he would be on 200 grand a week, and he's turned them down. So it's not necessarily about the money. I think there's a lot more. He wants to win stuff, and we know that. He said it in interviews. Paris Saint-Germain, they're going through a sort of spending freeze type thing, looking to move on. The likes of Messi and Neymar free up the books a little bit as well. League Oz income has just bottomed out completely. And Barcelona as well, because Barcelona, they're going through money problems as well. You look at how they dealt with the likes of, in the summer, they bought Jules Condé, they got Christensen on a free transfer, they got everything with Gabby in terms of his contract status. They're in a real pickle at the moment as well. So really there's really 9 clubs potentially, and even some of them is like question mark on in terms of how they then, in terms of finance moves and other people they're looking at. So in essence, there's less than 10 clubs that in the world that Declan Rice could potentially go to. So I'm going to go through them. Give you my views, my pros and cons. It'd be interesting to see what you think as well. Obviously, we don't want him to go. We want him. He's our captain. He is our talisman. We don't want him gone, but we are realistic, aren't we, as a fan base? And for me, there comes to a point where if he wants to, he's, don't want to say too good for the club, but he is an elite level player. He's an elite level player. He's pretty much 1 or 2 on the starting lineup for England. He's the number 1 pick for West Ham every game. He's man of the match more often than not. He's usually at about an 8 in terms of a match rating as well. So he is an upper echelon player, and he wants to play in an upper echelon side that's competing across multiple, fronts and winning stuff consistently. And we can't stand in his way. I don't think we can. And if we can get, and he knows his value as well. He knows, what value that the transfer fee could make to West Ham in terms of rebuilding, in terms of, taking over from Declan Rice, in terms of replacements or how that money's reinvested within the team, so he knows his worth. So I think realistic. I mean, we'll go through them. We'll go through them, and I'll give you my view. So realistically, I think this is his number one. Not from him, but for me, if I would be Man City, based on what he said and based on where the club is in terms of financially, in terms of competing for trophies. He's virtually at City. He's virtually guaranteed to win trophies. They've won the Premier League 3 years in a row. No club's won it. No club has won the league 4 years in a row in English football, I believe, or something like that. It's very. So potentially it could be next season could be record breaking for Man City if they won the trophy, won the Champions Premier League. But regardless of that, they're also in the. I mean, they're going to win the They're on the course for the original treble with the Champions League final against Inter Milan and the FA Cup against Man United. They're also guaranteed Champions League football next season, and virtually under the current bubble, Pep bubble, guaranteed it every season. Let's be honest, they are head and shoulders above everyone else in the Premier League. Yes, you might have one or two contenders every other year, but they're always them and Man City. You've got Pep Guardiola. I think it's fair to say that Pep's probably one of the greatest coaches we've had in the Premier League. I think he's literally in the conversation. Him and Sir Alex and Arsene Wenger. I think the three of them, and obviously Avram Grant, goes without saying. But so he's in that conversation as one of the greatest managers ever to have coached in English football, or maybe in the Premier League era, because you can't compare Brian Clough to Pep Guardiola. But in terms of what he's brought to the game, he's revolutionised, I think. And this is not a loving. This is sort of subjectively looking at Man City. They're a bloody good side. And yes, they do spend a lot of money, but they don't spend loads of money. Yes, in terms of how much they can spend. So agreed, they spend 100 million on Jack Grealish. That's probably a little bit. They paid a little bit too much, but they spend 50 million on Haaland, which is a fair level of investment. Look at what he's returned. Julio Alves, 15 million quid. Obviously, David Moyes didn't think he was good enough, but what he's brought, they're very shrewd. Nathan Ake, they got on a free transfer, wasn't it? No, didn't they pay for Nathan Ake? But they're very, very clever in terms of their transfer dealings. They have the financial clout to spend 120 million pounds if they want to on someone like Declan Rice, or 90 million plus Calvin Phillips, or whatever it is. They can offer him wages. They can offer him top wages as well. Now the cons are Man City is such a great side, and it seems ridiculous to think of it outside West Ham, but he's not necessarily guaranteed a starting lineup at the moment in terms of being in that first 11. Man City, they've used the least amount of players this season, which is again very different from other years where they tended to rotate. They haven't had that as much this season. I think they've had 25 players. I think West Ham are next under them in terms of the least amount of players used in the Premier League. So if you're in, you're in. Now, I think we know Pep likes him. We know Pep sees him as a alternative, the next Ilkay Gundogan, and I can see that. Yeah, a midfield of him and Rodri is pretty much going to guarantee the Premier League, in all honesty. Now, Gundogan, he's come to the end of his contract this season. He's looking to move on. The club he wants to move on to is Barcelona, who I've said are absolutely in shit creek without a paddle in terms of financially. So they're going to be able to have the financial clout to afford Gundogan on a decent wage in terms of everything else as well. So City have offered him apparently a 1-year deal. He wants a multi-year deal. So they're apparently going to offer him a 1+1, a bit like we do with Fabianski, which is good for Gundogan, but for someone like Declan Rice, he will be competing for that spot, and that he might enjoy that. But you look at Jack Grealish. You look at how Grealish has had to work, to establish himself in that City side. You look how someone like Phil Foden has had to sit on the bench, really. He's an England starter and he's still sitting on the bench. So there is that risk with him. And also family as well. Away from football, we know we know Rice is a big family man. Obviously, he came on the picture of his little baby. He had his nephews. All his family live around sort of the Cobham area, and so he would probably have to move. And being his family or his agents as well, they would probably all have to move up to Manchester, which is a big ask, particularly someone we said we got him on at 14, didn't we? And he moved across London. He saw his mum once a week or something ridiculous like that. So that's something which will make a big impression on him in terms of where he could go and what he will do and how that will affect his family. And obviously, then he'll want to, this move isn't for a year or two. This move is his big move. So he may be there for 5 years, maybe. So the kids, his little baby will be 5 or 6, maybe going into infants. There's all these things that people bear in mind in terms of making a decision about where to go in the next club. So let's move on and talk about across Manchester and talk about United. Now, one of the things Rice has been saying, or we've led to be believed that Declan Rice has said, is a desire to sign for a heritage club. So a club which has got a lot of history behind it. Arguably, Man City has, but arguably, United has got more history, in my opinion, just looking at it objectively. Obviously, yes, for City, you can go back and look at Franny Lee and Rodney Marsh and things like that. But you can similarly go back and look at Bobby Charlton, George Best. Then you've got the Ferguson dynasty, class of 92, all that. Yes, you could argue City have got that now. And maybe United have lost their way. Number of managers, Van Gaal, David Moyes, Ralph Rangnick, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a lot of failed managers. With Ten Hag, I think they've got their first foot on the ladder in terms of becoming a force again. And I think they will challenge for domestic trophies next year. I don't think necessarily the Premier League. I think they're probably I reckon they're still a little way away from doing that. But they've got a good manager. They've got strong heritage. Rice would walk into the first team. Him and Casemiro as a two, fucking hell, that's an amazing midfield too. Plus Fernandes in front. He's a very, very strong. It could become a title winning or title challenging midfield. I think the rest of the side lets it down a little bit. So there is a bit of a rebuild job, I think, there. And there is Champions League football. Although do they have to get another point, I think, but virtually guaranteed Champions League football. And considering where they were last year compared to where they are this year under Ten Hag, I think that's actually, it shows they are a project, but I think they are a project which is slightly further down the line than maybe a Newcastle. I think Newcastle are probably about maybe 12 months behind Man United in terms of that project status, potentially. But again, that's just me being subjective and looking from the outside in. Cons are there is uncertainty with the ownership. We know there are four bidders for the ownership of Man United. 5 million, 6 billion. Ridiculous money. Whether it is Sheikh Yazim's investment bank or Sir Jim Ratcliffe or the other two. There's going to be new man, and with that will become new chairman, will become new board members, will become maybe a different view on how the team is developed. Maybe they invest more into the academy. There's lots of uncertainty there. So you might want to wait until things shake out a little bit. FFP means that apparently money is very tight. They only have a very finite budget to spend in the summer, according to United Stand. When Gio had the lady on there previewing the Man United game, she said about £100 million. Now we know they're looking at Harry Kane. Harry Kane would be their marquee signing. I think they would view him as being more of a marquee signing than Declan Rice. We wouldn't, but they would. Just because he's the England captain, he's the England all-time goal scorer, yada, 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 yada. Despite the fact Declan Rice will probably be the next England captain. They're not guaranteed to win trophies immediately. They're better, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee of Man City will win a trophy, but a little bit more that way. And again, the same thing about moving to Manchester as well may well be an option, which is a con. Let's talk about Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea, Todd Bowley's in there and spending money like it's water, trying to put together a side by buying them. And I think the trouble is the lack of manager in play at the moment. There's they seem like a side which is a little bit rudderless, which is completely rudderless actually. It looks like a ship without a captain, and I said ship. So in terms of pros, we know that his family, he lives in Cobham. His family are Chelsea fans. Yes, his nephews have become West Ham fans, and Dec has become a West Ham fan by playing for the club. But they still are Chelsea first and foremost. They definitely have the money to buy him. There's not a problem with that. He would walk into the first team. He would probably be captain, or he'd be very close to becoming captain. That's the same, I think, as City United. I think City would be a long term. United, he could walk in and be captain, particularly likes of Maguire going. I wouldn't say Fernandes is much of a captain. I think Declan Rice is a true captain in terms of the terms of the British game. His family wouldn't need to move because they're all that side already of London. Now the uncertainty is, firstly, they haven't got a bloody manager. If it's Pochettino could be of interest to Declan Rice. We know what he brings to the Premier League. We know how good he is for players. He's a very good man manager. Dec may well want to play for Pochettino. But the flip side is the heritage. Maybe I wouldn't say they're a heritage club in terms of prestige. They had obviously the 70s, then they sort of went by the wayside, and obviously then Abramovich came in and, in essence, transformed them. And then obviously Todd took over eventually. So I wouldn't say there's a heritage there, but he has family heritage, if that makes sense. No European football next year. That's a huge thing, surely. West Ham, we could be in Europe and Chelsea won't. We could, with a huge gold swing, we could finish above them. Could you? And even if we finish the same amount of points as them, to then spend 120 million pounds to go up one spot, in the Premier League. In essence, that's what he would be doing. And obviously, with the new manager coming in, there's a lot of squad changes. They have a huge squad which they need to sort out. Obviously, they have quite an aging squad as well. The likes of Kante, he'll be, imagine he would probably move. Thiago Silva's 36, 37, something like that as well. Koulibaly's in his early to mid 30s as well. So there's a huge rebuild job. There's a project job there, and obviously it was the project wasn't older. Graham Potter wasn't given enough time to fulfill that project or even start it really, but they did buy good players. Noni's, I think, a fantastic. And Mudryk, I think, is a great player as well. They bought João Felix on loan as well, who I thought he could be a very good player. So that one's a family. That to me, that's more of a heart than a head. If he goes to Chelsea, he's followed his heart rather than followed his head, in my humble opinion. Right, let's talk about Newcastle. Now, Newcastle, obviously, Eddie Howe's done a fantastic job there. The pros, they definitely have the money to buy him. Champions League next season as well. I mean, that's a fantastic thing for, again, I think they only need one more point as well from the game on tomorrow. Is it tomorrow they play? Can't remember. He would walk into their first team on paper without any preconception of the side. He would, I mean, that side on paper doesn't sound a very exciting side. It's a team, isn't it? It's a team. They've still got some quality players. They've got a lot of the England players in there, like Nick Pope and obviously Trippier. But they haven't got what I'd say an elite level on paper, an elite level. Now they've got a great team ethic. Eddie Howe's coached them fantastically. You've got the likes of, Joe Linton playing in sort of defensive midfield. He would come in, Dec would come in as a big fish in that pond. A pond which is already, they're going to be playing in Champions League, and they have the financial clout. They're the richest club in the world. That it could be of interest to him. But as I said, one of the things is heritage. It's new money, isn't it? They're a new. It's the equivalent of new money in the England game in terms of being heritage. There's no heritage there really, not compared to a Man United, for example. There's no guarantee of winning trophies. Yes, they've improved, and yes, they'll be in a conversation for domestic trophies next year. but there's no guarantee they'll win them. There's no guarantee that City will win them, but they're more likely to. And they would have to leave even further up, have to, move to Newcastle. Wyoming. So I think that was a bit of a non-starter, I'll be honest. Let's move on. Let's talk about Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal are the ones which are heavily linked with him. And they want a whole new midfield of him and Moses Caicedo, and they want to spend 120, 140 million pounds. That's not going to work in terms of that. West Ham will want a lot more money, and so will Brighton as well. He would walk into their first team again, possibly as captain. Obviously, Martin Odegaard is currently the captain there, but he would arguably be, walk into the first team and could well be the captain. The likes of Xhaka, looks like he's moving on. Midfield. I mean, they're not particularly strong in the midfield. Obviously, you've got Odegaard. I think a two of, or three of, if they got Caicedo, Rice, and Odegaard's a very dynamic midfield. Very interesting. His family would need to move. They're still based in London. They've got Champions League football next season. They could afford him. I was going to put an asterisk next to the could rather than next season. They could afford him. It dependent on their other targets, and obviously, £92 million apparently it would be their opening bid, and we want 120. So they need to start lubbing in a few extra players there. And there's guys we're looking at, Florin, who's currently on loan at Will Steele's Rem. Apparently interested in him. Lokonga. Apparently we're looking at him as a potential one to add into the pot. So, they have players that could interest us as well. The cons, they choked this season. Doesn't matter what you think, they choked this season. They choked with the pressure of Man City. City had a poor start to the season. Poor in their eyes, phenomenal for us in our eyes, but poor for them in their eyes. And they basically started churning, juggernaut, kept winning. And Arsenal, just as they have done before, they choked. That will put some doubt that they have the winning mentality. Man City have a winning mentality. I don't think Arsenal have. Yes, they've won the odd FA Cup here. I think they've won the FA Cup more times than anyone else, haven't they? They haven't won the league for years. Haven't won in Europe for years. So it's no guarantee. And there is a semi-rebuild job. They have guys like, as I said, Xhaka. They've got a lot of squad players they need to move on. The left-back situation with Tierney. They've still got Ben White playing as a right back. There's a lot of moving parts. Yes, they've got guys like Ramsdale, who Deck will be pally with for the England duties and stuff like that. But there's still a lot of moving parts there. So I think they're still maybe a season out, a season away from being a more solid unit. I don't know. It's all very similar. Apart from maybe the Man City. It's all in Liverpool. Obviously, another side that could definitely improve with Declan Rice. I mean, again, I think he walks into their first team, possibly captain as well. The likes of Jordan Henderson's coming to the end of his career. James Milner's obviously moving on. They're sort of the old guard, the Robbie Firminos, the Manes, that they've all moved on. And the likes of Diaz, Nunez. So they're definitely in a state of progression, I think, in terms of them as a club. And so there is a project. Klopp's a very charismatic manager. As I said, he's one of the only managers, apart from maybe Moyes, who, when the teams are warming up, they will actually stand and watch the opposition train. So I like Moyes does it as well, but he's one of the only two that I see regularly who do that. He's a good manager, Klopp. You would run for a brick wall for him. Just one of those types of, I just get that vibe from him. They are a heritage side. Liverpool, Man United, these guys have got a lot of history, and they haven't had a talisman since Steven Gerrard. And I genuinely think Declan Rice could be their Steven Gerrard if he went to there. I think he's got what it takes. He's young. he could be there for next 10 years, and be that Gerrard character. Maybe not the goals, but just in terms of how the team are built around him. And he could have the team like what we should have done is build a team around Declan Rice, make him indispensable so he doesn't want to leave. And I think that's something that you could do at Liverpool. There's no Champions League. They'll be in the Europa League next year, same as us potentially. There's no guarantee of winning trophies. His family had to lead to Liverpool, and also there's uncertainty about ownership. That's a huge thing because then it's a lack of investment. I don't think they could afford him at the moment. I generally don't think they can afford him unless they get bought out. There's several big clubs out there who's still looking for ownership or looking for changing, and Liverpool's one of them, same as Man United. So I don't think Liverpool could afford him. So now let's talk about some foreign based sides. So let's talk about Bayern Munich. Now, obviously, Thomas Tuchel apparently is very keen about getting Declan Rice. He knows him very well from his Premier League days, and obviously former Chelsea manager as well. So I'm sure there was plenty of talk about Declan Rice amongst coaches and staff who were there when Dec was a wee lad, and obviously he keeps in touch with a lot of the ex coaches as most players do, really. Now, Bayern are guaranteed to win trophies. Not domestically for sure, and then have the ability to progress far into Europe. They continually perform well. Not this year, ironically, as such, but they've had some changing in managers and stuff like that with Nagelsmann, and obviously Tuchel coming in sort of a third into the end of the season. They've got Champions League football next year. I'd say he would be a first team starter, maybe as a replacement for Kimmich, who might move on. They've got Goretzka, they've got some good good manager. Yeah, they've got some good midfielders. They always produce good talent as well, which comes through the ranks, and they pick off the best youth players, a bit like City do or Chelsea used to do. They buy the best youth players in so they can develop the squad. And that's same with Man City as well. I mean, look at the City. We obviously played them in the under 18s Premier League national playoff. They obviously beat us. They've won that 3 years in a row. So they might decide actually we could spend 120 million pounds on Declan Rice now, or we could offer Gundogan a 2-year deal, get one of the guys like Oscar Borges or one of the guys coming through from the development squad, a couple of years, bit of first team football, and then see if then it's worth spending that money on him. I don't know. You just don't know, do you? Obviously, the main issues are the fact is it's abroad. It's going to be going to Germany. It's the whole family or majority of the family move out there. There's a language barrier. There's different cultures. There's a young child growing up, a baby growing up in a foreign country. All that stuff is something you have to bear in mind. And so for me, I'd love him to go abroad. I would, but that's just me being a West Ham fan. I wouldn't want to see him a match today all the time. And that's same true with Real Madrid. I mean, realistically, they're probably one of the only other clubs who have money in the bank, so to speak. And where that money comes from is a different discussion. Again, virtually guaranteed to win trophies. Champions League again. Obviously, they got turned over by City this year. It's not a vintage Real Madrid year. Heritage, tick. Huge heritage. And even heritage with British-based players. The likes of Beckham, the likes of Gareth Bale, Steve McManaman. These guys have Michael Owen. These guys have played Julien Faubert. No, it's not British player, but obviously he was already over there, and he signed on loan for Real Madrid, didn't and first leave on the bench. But there's a heritage there in terms of them as a club, prestige. They have the money to buy him as well. Cons, same with the sort of Munich side, is the family would need to move to Spain. I mean, to be honest, where would I rather live? Madrid or Munich. Madrid, the weather be better, it'd be sunnier, be hotter, nicer climate, but it is a different world. It's a different language, and we're in Germany. British English is not accepted, but there is more British speakers. Um, when I'm doing conferences and stuff, whereas if I've done stuff in Barcelona and Madrid, they come to me speaking Spanish straight away. Wherever so I'm like, there's uncertainty with the manager as well. The whole thing with Ancelotti. I mean, apart from, I think someone said a stat like in the last 60 or 50 years or something like that, no manager's spent more than 3 or like 4 seasons at Real Madrid. So there is a constant churn of managers. They expect success. And some players really like that. Obviously, they haven't had the Galacticos sort of era for a while. I don't think that will ever come back. But you have all that sort of heritage behind it as well. They might most definitely probably be buying Jude Bellingham. So if they bought Jude Bellingham, they're not going to have enough money to buy Declan Rice. A midfield too of Bellingham and Rice would be amazing, as particularly the likes of Modric, Toni Kroos coming to maybe their end of usefulness at Real Madrid. They're looking to, very similar. It's an aging side looking to develop and bring sort of more youthful players in. So Rice and Bellingham would both fit the bill there. And lastly, just again a slight curveball would be Borussia Dortmund. And the reason why I've said that is a Champions League next year. They've won the or virtually we're going to win the Bundesliga this year, which is absolutely phenomenal. Particularly when you look at someone like Bayern Munich just there. They've got a fanatical fan base, which is something to bear in mind. The atmosphere at going to a Dortmund game is phenomenal. If they sell Bellingham, they'll have 100, literally the same amount that they'd probably spend on Declan Rice in the bank. There is a West Ham connection there already. We've got Haller there, obviously, who's come back from obviously that horrible illness. They've got the head coach. They've got Edin, former West Ham assistant, Edin Terzic. Slaven Bilic's right-hand man at the time when he was at West Ham. So he knows Declan Rice. They've also, so it could be an interesting one. In terms of cons, again, as you got the Germany thing, the money would be based on maybe Bellingham going. They tend to buy players over. They don't tend to spend a lot of money on players. They tend to develop them. So Bellingham, didn't they get Bellingham on? I can't remember if they bought him from Birmingham. Was it Birmingham? Or whether he signed a pre-contract agreement or something. Yeah. Anyway, so it doesn't. They spend not always spending a lot of money. They did spend a bit on Haller, but again, it wasn't huge amounts of money. And they might not be big enough for Deck. Do you know what I mean? It almost might be ridiculous thinking. Maybe Dortmund might be too small for Declan's ambitions. I don't know. You don't know. But there we go. I've ordered on for almost 40 minutes, unbelievably. And then obviously you got the replacements. We spoke about the replacements before. There's a whole bunch. There's a shitload of midfielders who are going to be available in the summer. So and it's all about getting the right balance. That's not exhaustive, that list at all. But there's a lot of players out there available. Whether free transfers, whether you're spending money on them, whether you're hanging out and waiting for them to sign to not sign new contracts and then sign on a free. There's a lot of midfielders out there, but I just thought it would be interesting just to look at it a little bit subjectively, stepping away from that claret tinted glasses because they're black now. So like my heart, but be interested to see out of those there's 2 questions. One is who you'd like him to go to, and the second one is who you think he's going to go to, because that's very different. For me, I would like him to go to abroad. Munich or Madrid would be phenomenal. I think he's more likely to go to Man City. Yes, that's what I think. Anyway, as I said, if you like what we do, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Or if you don't, let us know. Subscribe, hit the notification bell and make a comment. It'd be great to hit 20,000 subscribers by the beginning of the season. Beginning next season, be amazing. Obviously, Premier League as well, Premier League season. And yeah, all that good stuff. So take care, stay safe, stay warm. Anton will be doing daily and the Hammers headlines and stuff later on today. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Take care. Much love. Bye. Bye.